What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode. I'm Josh Hein. This is the Pitchless Selling Podcast. It's the podcast where we talk about sales, business, and sprinkle in a little bit of personal motivation for you. We're on a mission here to change people's lives personally and professionally. It means everything to us, and we are so glad you found us today. So whether you're watching this thing online or maybe you're listening to this episode somewhere in the car, in the gym, wherever it is, just so glad you're here, and thankful for the opportunity to be able to talk today about a very, I would say, one of the most commonly talked about objections in the sales game, something that I have a very strong opinion about, and something that we spend a lot of time training on in the Pitchless Selling training programs, level 1, level 2 programs, and our business programs as well. It's a pretty big topic, so I figured it's worth spending a little bit of time on the podcast talking about. One thing I do have, I've been getting a lot of questions from salespeople about certain things here and there, and every once in a while I get a message and people ask me, a question about this or that, and so I figured, we ought to maybe do a podcast episode here, like a Q&A, where I answer some of the questions that come in. So I have an ask of you here off the top of the episode. Do me a favor and in the comments, leave me a comment with something you're struggling with in your sales process. Maybe a question you have about sales, or maybe even about pitchless selling and our methodology, our framework, whatever it is. Anything that you're battling with or you're curious about as it relates to sales or business, just leave it in the comments. And what we'll do is we'll compile a list of those questions that come in, and we'll answer those on a future podcast. So if you can do me that favor and put it in the comments, we will we'll do everything we can to get to as many of them, or if we can get to all of them, that'd be awesome. So I appreciate that. All right. So for today's episode, we are going to talk about the old faithful pricing objections. All right. So first and foremost, I've got some great news for everybody. Drum roll, please. Insert drum roll here. Turns out there is no such thing as a pricing objection. They're gone. It's not a real thing. You don't have to worry about them anymore. Pricing objections are not real. It's fictional. All right, that's the good news. Surprise! I'm just joking. I crack myself up because I talk about this so much, and the fact of the matter is, my opinion is this. Look, a pricing objection or a cost objection, that is not the real objection, okay? A price or cost objection is not real, right? There is no such thing. Now, someone might present an objection in a manner in which they're complaining about or asking about price or cost, or they're saying that the cost is too much. But the fact of the matter is, if someone tells you that it costs too much or your price is too high, it's because they don't want it badly enough. They don't want what you're selling badly enough. They don't need what you're selling badly enough. You haven't built enough value in whatever it is you're trying to sell compared to the price that you're asking for it. Fundamentally, this is actually a pitchless selling foundation building block, okay? We fundamentally believe that people will pay any price for anything if they want it badly enough. That is a fundamental belief. And for any of you who have taken our programs, that's something I talk a lot about. It's actually one of the first things that you learn. People will pay any price for anything if they want it badly enough or if they see enough value, okay? So if you believe that, if you can get your mind around that, then the rest of this conversation, the podcast episode will make a lot of sense. It'll be a little bit easier to comprehend, and you probably get behind it. Probably actually take away a couple things that you can use in your next sales call or your next sales opportunity. If you can't get behind that, if you can't agree that people will pay any price for anything if they want it badly enough, if they see enough value, then let me just give you an example. So imagine for a second that you're stranded in a desert somewhere, okay? And I'm talking barren desert. There's nothing. You got no chance. It's slow and painful for you out there. All signs leading to bad news. All right. So you're going on your third day, and it's your third day without water. And as you may or may not know, the human body can go 3 days without water before it starts shutting down. Bad things start happening. And so you're on your third day, haven't had any water. yeah, you're getting pretty close to bad news. And out of nowhere, here comes old Josh coming moseying by on with his water cart, right? I got a cart full of bottles of water, more water than you've seen, obviously in 3 days, but more water on a cart than you've seen in a long time, right? At this point, this water is very expensive. I mean, look, how much would you pay for a bottle of water at that point? It's going to keep you alive, right? You're 3 days without water. You're going to give me every dollar you had, and you'd probably give me an IOU or whatever else you had to do in order to get a bottle of water from me, wouldn't you? Of course you would. It's because if you don't get my water, if you don't buy a bottle of water off my old water cart here, it's probably going to be it for you, right? So this water is going to save your life. You can't put a price on that. You're going to buy a bottle of water, and you're going to pay pretty much whatever you can for it. You'll take out a loan if you have to. So my point is, even if someone tells you that's too expensive, we don't have the money, it's not in the budget, I literally don't have that much money, I can't afford this, whatever. All of those things, well, there may be some truth to some of those things. The fact is, if they want it badly enough, right? If they see enough value, if they want it badly enough or need it badly enough, they'll find the money. They'll do what they have to get the money, right? And so what I want you to, you might have seen this. Maybe you've had people tell you, a little steep, a little too much, right? A little too expensive. Or, it's outside of our budget. Okay. The fact is, it's not. It may be outside of what is budgeted, but that budget can change, right? If you want this badly enough, it can change. And so I've actually used similar examples to the story that I just told you, the water cart story. I've used that on sales calls before. I've told people that's how I've overcome that objection in the past. I've had people insist that no, it's just not in the budget. No, I literally just, Josh, I get it. There's no other problems, no other objections. Everything is good. I love everything about this. I literally just don't have the money. So I give them that same example. I've used that. I literally told that story to prospects. Look, if you were stranded in the desert, going your last day before dying without water, you needed water today or you were dead. If I came by with a water cart and I was charging you more money than you had, what would you do? And that's what I ask them. I say, well, I don't know. I'd find the money or I'd die. Okay, exactly. So the real problem here is that you're not willing to go find the money, right? You're not willing to get creative. You don't want this badly enough to get creative or to get uncomfortable and maybe ask for extra money or additional funds or go find it from somewhere else in order to get this thing that you want. What you're telling me, and here comes the big reveal, is that most often is that price and cost objections are value objections. They don't want what you have badly enough to justify the cost, period, plain and simple, right? The cost of your solution does not outweigh the cost of, or outweighs the cost of their problems, right? So it's too heavy, your cost is too much, they'll deal with the problem for a little bit longer. They're not willing to pay your price. And so that's the problem. That's the real objection. What happens is you've got to figure out if you get a pricing or cost objection, the first thing you do, write it down if you're taking notes in this thing, the first thing you do if you get a price or cost objection is figure out what's the real objection, okay? Because it's not price. It's not cost. Even if they literally do not have the money, the fact of the matter is they will pay any amount of money for anything if they want it badly enough. All right, they'll find the money. They can find the money. You have to believe this. You have to operate in this way. And don't be afraid to tell people that. If you've done your job right all the way up until this point, you should have built enough rapport and trust in someone that you can be relatively candid in this moment or at this point of the conversation. And that will free you up to say some of these things, to challenge people, to push a little bit, and to say things that might be a little bit uncomfortable, okay? The problem is a lot of salespeople aren't willing to, or they're too scared or too timid or whatever it is to ask the tough questions. They're not willing to dig deeper or push people or lean on people. Or worse yet, salespeople have always been told their whole careers, or by, even if it's a short amount of time, they've always been told by people, you can't ever let the conversation get negative, right? You have to stay positive. You have to agree with them all the time. Yes, and, right? Yes, and just keep agreeing with them. Keep the mood light. Keep things positive. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. There is a right way and a safe way to challenge people, to ask them questions that are slightly uncomfortable. That's okay. To be honest, that's a part of sales, right? And so if you have someone who's giving you a pricing objection, step number one is to find the true objection. Why do they think it's too expensive? All right, so you can ask a question. I'll give you one or two here. We have several more in our training programs that we go through, and we've got a workbook as well that includes a bunch of these responses, these types of questions that you can ask. But a question that you could ask, a follow-up question when someone, Josh, it's a little bit too expensive. Say, I could completely understand you feeling like this is more expensive than you had thought it would be or thought it might cost. But tell me what you mean by too expensive. Right? And so you just stop. So there's another thing I did there, and I'm not going to get into the tone and the verbal pacing and the pausing and all this stuff. That's all separate stuff. We train on that as well. But the question that needs to come when someone gives you a pricing objection needs to be as broad, as open-ended as you've ever asked. Okay? You have to open it up for them to give you an honest, well thought out answer that explains where they're coming from. And the real trick here is you need to keep digging until you get to that root objection. Okay? So when I say something like, and what do you mean by too expensive? Or just so I understand, what do you mean by too expensive? Or what do you mean when you say it's too expensive? Right? Ask that question. They'll give you an answer. And you might have to continue going down this path to keep getting to the point where you understand the real root of the objection. You might have to ask another open-ended question, something like, oh, interesting, tell me more about that. Or, how do you mean? Or explain that a little bit more to me, right? And so don't be afraid to just keep asking questions, not awkwardly. I mean, again, make it conversational, but you want to ask questions all the way until you get to the real true root of it, the real true root of what is this pricing or cost objection? Because it's never about price or cost. It's something else. Again, if people will pay any price for anything, if they see enough value or if they want it badly enough, then it's not a pricing objection. It's not a cost objection. It's something else. They don't want it badly enough. Why? Do they not think it's going to help them? Do they not think it solves all their problems? Do they not think their problems warrant solving? Do they not think their problems are worth that X amount of money that you're charging for the solution, right? And if that's the case, then you need to focus on the impact that the problems are having, right? Get back to the impact. How are these, it's not just about the problems, but how are the problems actually impacting their business or impacting their lives personally? Okay? So pricing objections are one of the ones that come up most commonly. It's probably the most common question I get asked, Josh, how do I overcome these pricing objections? Especially with, look, there are a lot of products and services out there, that there are a competitor for who has a free or less expensive option, right? So I don't know. Think about what you sell. Think about your competition. Are you on the higher end of the pricing, amongst your competitors? More expensive solution than your competitors offer? Or are you on the lower end, right? That actually does change how you approach the response as well. But at the end of the day, when you have someone telling you, oh, I think this is too expensive, your first step has to be to get to the root of that objection. All right, so the second step, once you understand what the root of the objection is, when you're getting through you're working through a pricing or cost objection, the second step after you understand the root is that you have to reestablish that your solution is suitable for solving their problems or checking the box, or it creates that high level of want for them, right? The future with your product or with your service they have to confirm that this checks that box, right? That this is it. It does that thing for them, whatever it is. Okay? Because like I said, remember, if people will pay any price for anything, if they want it badly enough, first of all, you have to figure out what the problem is, what the true objection is. Then you have to confirm that they want or agree with the value proposition that you've laid out. Right? They have to agree. You can't just have told them. And this second step, look, I train this all the time, and a lot of people can get through that first step relatively easy. It's relatively easy if you're willing to ask those open-ended questions and push people a little bit. Again, professionally, confidently, again, have the mindset that you're out to help people. Have the mindset that you're here to help. You're trying to help them. In order to help them, you need to understand where they're coming from, right? Tell me the truth on this. Let me understand. How do I help you, right? So most people can do that first step pretty easily. But what they realize is in this second step, that is where they have gone wrong somewhere in their presentation. And it's okay. It's okay because you're learning that now, right? Better than not learning that and then just having someone say no and now having lost the deal altogether. So it's good that you got the info. I would have loved you have gotten that out of them sooner. The way we train in our programs, we teach you to sort of check those boxes and go through the sales process in a very specific way. One of the reasons we train to do it the way we do is so, frankly, you get ahead of this objection. So the fact of the matter is, following the Pitchless selling framework and the methodology, the way we teach people to sell, pricing and cost objections are far more rare. They come up so much more infrequently than they do in selling in other ways. With that said, this second step is where people usually realize that they've missed something earlier on. They haven't checked that box, or they didn't get the prospect. The prospect wasn't fully committed or fully bought in. And so here's what happens, right? In the second step, it's very, very common. Be honest with yourself. Is this you? Has this happened to you, right? If you've been selling, especially for a little while, the same product or same service or the same company, if you've been selling something for a while, I see this commonly, where you've connected the dots in your head. It makes sense to you. The value is obvious to you, right? You're selling with conviction. You're selling with passion. You know that that your product or your service is going to help them. But then you get this objection, and you realize on sort of step 2 of overcoming this, you realize they haven't connected the dots. They're not there with you. They don't share that same passion. They don't either see the value or even understand or agree with the fact that it is going to do what they need it to do, or it is going to change their life, right? Yeah, maybe it's a nice to have. I just don't think we need it. Right? I've heard that a lot. Yeah, look, it would be nice to have this, but I don't think we need it, and especially not for that price. Oh boy. All right. So if you get that, what do? Well, this is like a whole, let's take a deep breath in and regroup, because we got to go back through in an abbreviated way. You can't spend, again, a ton of time on this, but you've got to find a way to go back through and reconfirm the parts of your presentation in which you created that value or showed them that value or discussed that value, the value prop of your product or service. So what you do is you need to recap everything that you talked about or showed, and the exact points, the exact parts of your service or product that can be tied to the problems or the needs or the wants that they had, right? Why did you talk about what you talked about? Why did you show what you showed? Why did you discuss the things that you did about your product or service? Why did you go through those things? Because if you just showed them a bunch of stuff or just talked about a bunch of stuff that frankly can't be tied to a problem or doesn't really add value for them, well, then there you go. Now you've created a problem, and that's why you're getting this objection. Again, this doesn't happen if you sell the way we teach you in the program, but a lot of times people either just assume they know what prospects need. Salespeople assume they know what prospects need, or they assume what the problems are that the prospect's having, or they assume that they understand the value prop of their product or service so well that they're just going to go tell the prospect, hey, this is what we got. This is why it's great. This is why everyone loves it. I'm sure you'll love it too. You can't do that. No matter how long or how much you've done this, you cannot assume anything. Every prospect is going to be different. You need to approach it as such. You need to approach every opportunity as it's a different opportunity, different set of problems, and a different way that you need to present your value. So if you get the pricing objection, first and foremost in your head, what triggers? What is it? Pricing is not the real objection. All right, say it again. Pricing is not the real objection. I hope wherever you're watching this or listening to this, I would just love it. I would be so tickled if you would just say it with me. Pricing is not the real objection. That's what we're going to say. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Pricing is not the real objection. I just know somebody out there, somebody said it with me, and that just, that is fantastic. I hope you were like somewhere in public as well. So, pricing is not the real objection. If you get that objection, tell yourself that and then go through the steps, right? Step 1, figure out what is the real objection. What's the problem? What are they really hung up on? What is the real issue? Before you can start to solve it, don't dive in and try to solve the problem, right? Don't just jump in if you get a pricing objection and talk about price or discount or what. No. Don't sell yourself short. That is not good. That's even worse. Far too often salespeople get a pricing objection. Well, and their answer is, well, we can work on that for you. There's something we can do for you. Now you're in even worse trouble. To be honest with you, that's the worst thing you could do. Do not do that. All right? Figure out the root of the problem, the root of the issue. Don't cheapen your offering by giving a discount or something like that. Figure out the root, and then step 2 is figuring out and checking the box, making sure that your product or offering, you've connected the dots with them in terms of value proposition, solving their problems, and being something that they want or need. So it's first figure out the root of the problem. Second, make sure that you've presented an offering that actually drives value for them and that they recognize the value, that they have said the value, they themselves have spoken the value or admitted where it adds value. And again, you have to be results focused with that. Focused on the results of your product or solution. Okay? Not just the good things that it does. What's going to come of having your product or service? What are the results that you can deliver? So, hopefully, again, this is just a short podcast, an abbreviated session on how I overcome this objection. I told you it's one of the most common things that we train on. We dive deep into this and many other objections, objection handling in the Pitchless selling programs. And if you want to learn more, you can go through the program and take a deep dive into this thing, as well as of course several other of the most common objections that are out there. So that is it for the podcast today. Like I said at the beginning, if there's something you're struggling with or something you're running into all the time, look, I'd love to help. So throw it in the comments and we'll do a Q&A podcast episode here coming up and go through those. Hopefully we can help you a little bit with whatever you're struggling with. The only other thing I'd ask you is again, if today's episode helped you, if you think there's someone else that you know that could benefit from it, please share it with them. I would really appreciate you sharing it. Just again, it doesn't have to be a bunch of people. I'm not asking you to spend a bunch of time on it, but if there's someone else out there that you think could benefit from today's message, not only would it be awesome for you to share it because we want to help, but you'd also be helping somebody else out too, which is really cool. So thank you so much for finding us today. Thanks for hanging in there, sticking with me, and hope you enjoyed the podcast. Hopefully you can implement this on your next call. So we will catch you all on the next episode of the Pitchless Selling Podcast. And until then, happy selling.